Hi, I'm Kevin Horst. I am the mental health specialist at Northeast Metro 916, and I am recording this in a hotel room in beautiful Paola, Kansas. And that's the dog that came with us. And before you think Paola is just this little kind of tiny, unimportant town 30 miles southwest of Kansas City, I really want you to know that Paola, after the discovery of natural gas, was the first town west of the Mississippi to use natural gas to light the streets. So don't be ripping on Paola. Besides, my in-laws live here. The thing I'm going to be talking about this morning is more perspective taking with regard to mental health than it is strategies. And after a few probably embarrassing moments of trying to share my screen, I will get started. Okay, I think that was maybe better than usual. I really wanted to be able to have Marvin Gaye's song "What's Going On" playing in the background, which I think is off the album that was the most highly rated album in the really recent Rolling Stone poll, but I'm not sure. But anyway, the title is Mental Health, Self-Awareness, and Perspective Taking in Really, Really Strange Days. Just a tiny bit about me. I've already said I'm a mental health specialist at Northeast Metro 916. Most of my career I have spent in mental health day treatment programs with Canvas Health. And my current role as a mental health professional, I do a little bit of training and a little bit more consultation and a little bit more meeting with kids who are struggling at the 916 schools. If you have questions about this or want to make comments about this, I would really, really welcome any of those, and that is my contact info. I'm hoping that this is a little bit different. I'm not going to talk about strategies. I'm not going to talk about things like the importance of exercise and eating right and sleeping, because I think everybody knows those things. I'm going to concentrate a little bit more on what I hope is a helpful mindset and a perspective and some self-awareness. The objectives are, I'm hoping that viewers will gain a broader perspective of how current events are impacting us. And with that, an increased awareness of how that impacts us both personally and professionally, and a little bit deeper of understanding of how our kids are affected, and then just a couple little strategies to maybe use with kids during distance learning. And that's those objectives, I think, are ambitious, and I hope that they are not presumptuous. So a little bit about background noise. Background noise, is that stuff that's kind of always going on, that's just out of our reach or out of our awareness. So it's kind of always there, and it bothers us a little bit, but we don't always know it's that thing that's bothering us. So it might be things like everyday stresses like bills, our relationships with people that we worry about, just kind of everyday occurrences like, how much is the traffic gonna make me late to be where I want to be? Things like that. And now I have a really bad idea. Let's add these things. Let's add a global pandemic. And using the phrase a global pandemic, I think, doesn't acknowledge or show recognition of how that really impacts people. I think it was, there is a quote, I think it may have been Stalin, or it may be inaccurately given to Stalin, where he said something like, 1 million deaths is a statistic, a single death is a catastrophe. And using the phrase global pandemic reminds me of that, because that's this big thing that we really can't wrap our head around. But when we think about how that impacts us and the people that we care about on an everyday basis, and the everyday stress and additional background noise, When we think about it in that way, it means a whole lot more to us. Another thing that we add right now is a level of social unrest that's never been experienced in your lifetime. And I say your lifetime because I was alive in the 60s and it was some pretty bad stuff going on at that time. And I remember that. And there's a part of me that also wants to say thank God for the 70s in San Francisco, because that was way different. And then the third thing that's really going on right now is an election that's stressing our nation, no matter if you are red or blue. There's a level of stress that's kind of accompanying that, that also impacts us. And if that isn't all bad enough, for people who work in schools, distance learning has changed not only how we do what we do, but to some degree it's taken who we are. I believe that we get into a profession of working with people and working with children because we want to make a difference. We want to be helpful, and that's important to us. And the way that the pandemic has taken away our ability to do that has some degree taken away who we are. We're not teachers, we're not therapists, we're not social workers, we're not educational assistants in the same way that we used to be. And this can result in us feeling a bit lost. And with being lost, there's an identity confusion, and that's really, really a harmful thing. People who feel a loss of identity are far more likely to become burned out and experience things like increased depression and increased anxiety. We don't know how to do this deal thing very well. And that means we're not sure if we are being helpful. And that can lead to our feeling more useless, more hopeless, and sometimes despairing. And a lot of those feelings are also not just personal, they're also related to our worry that those things are happening to our kids. One of the things that's kind of funny and in a really kind of nice way is that we often think about the students that we teach as our kids, and they are not our kids. However, I think thinking about them as our kids acknowledges that for at least a brief period of time, they are entrusted by their parents to our care. And that is an incredibly important, maybe even holy task that we have undertaken. So, in addition to being lost, it's become harder for us to find us. We learn through feedback. We do things and we get feedback. So if we're painting a house and we're doing it in a way that's not leaving brush strokes, we think, okay, that's a good way to do this. And we continue to do that. When we do well at school, we get feedback from our students. They smile at us. They make progress. They indicate that they're doing better. They become entertaining. And from our colleagues, we get feedback. We get friendship. We get support that lets us know we're doing well or we're not doing well, and then we can modify our behavior. In these days, distance learning has taken a lot of that from us, and that's led to, I think, further isolation, and again, makes it much more difficult to find who we are and how we want to be in the world. Back when distance learning started for our schools right after spring break, excuse me, we would have a video meet that would include over 100 people every morning. And that went on for about, I want to say 2.5 months. Every morning we would have these kind of short meetings that, again, over 100 people. As time went on, fewer and fewer people would have their cameras on during that period of time. And the kind of banter that went on between people before the meeting decreased. And that worried me because I think that meant that people felt a little bit more isolated and were getting a little bit more discouraged. And as a result, kind of we're circling the wagons and becoming a little more isolated over time. And I believe that that happened because the feedback loop that we're used to experiencing and that feedback loop that gives us energy and motivation, a lot of that's gone for us. So given all that, I don't believe that we can and we should be expected by anyone, especially ourselves, to be our best self during this period of time. And paradoxically, knowing that we cannot be expected to be at our best can hopefully help us be more kind to ourselves. And being more kind to ourselves and more sympathetic to ourselves and understanding to ourselves can lead us to be a little bit more emotionally and personally and professionally stronger. Name it, tame it. Back when I was doing outpatient therapy, I was working with this young man who was really, really a cool guy. And he was depressed. And one of the things he said in the second to our last session was, "Hey, wait a minute. Do you mean I'm depressed? I'm not crazy?" And I said, "Yeah, and I don't even know if you're all that depressed. You might be just really, really sad." And that was really helpful to him. And again, that we had one more session, but in the last session, we didn't really do very much. And I think the takeaway from that is that knowing and naming and acknowledging a thing that is going on can relieve some pressure for us and quiet some of the background noise. So knowing and naming and acknowledging the impact of COVID and the social unrest and the election that increases and amplifies and adds to the background noise that we experience can hopefully name and tame some of the things that we're dealing with right now. Extrapolating from that, our students are experiencing the same thing. And in addition to those things, they're experiencing an increased level of parental stress, and they're aware of their parental stress. Even though parents oftentimes do a really good job trying to hide it, kids are skilled at recognizing that. And those stresses can be about their job, it can be about finances, it can be the loss of support that parents get from their jobs or their social community. Parents are also more isolated than they had been. And that can lead to a loss of identity for parents and for kids. Kids are no longer friends in the same way that they used to be because to some degree they are more isolated, if for no other reason than they don't see their friends at school. There's also an increased loss of support that kids experience, both the support that they get from us and the support they get from their peers. Kids don't know that, and therefore they can't say it, but it is happening to them and it does impact them. Our awareness that that's going on for them can help us teach them that that's going on and can lead to a little bit more self-awareness on their part, and therefore also increasing their ability to name it and tame it so it may have a little bit less and decreased impact on them. One of the things that we can do is normalize what's going on. One of the unstated objectives that I had for this thing is to normalize the experience that I believe we are all having, and by having it normalized, hopefully taking away a little bit of the power that it may have over us. We can do the same thing for our kids. I do believe that it's best done with kids, especially younger kids, indirectly. You can't have this conversation with kids. You can't talk to kids about how COVID is impacting them emotionally, because I don't think they're developmentally capable of managing that information too directly. But some of the things we can do are talking about it in an indirect way. And one example excuse me, came from an interaction I had with a kid online yesterday. And that was, he said, he was talking about bullying and being bullied. And he said, every kid that bullies has been abused by their parents at home. And responding to that by saying, no, that's wrong, even though that is wrong, would probably not be helpful. But saying things to them like, yeah, that might be true. There might be some truth to that. But I also think that it might happen that kids might bully for other reasons. And then you can name other reasons, like they may have been bullied at school, or they want to prevent people from bullying them, so they bully first. Or things like lots of people or most people may be that way, or more related to kind of the experience of anxiety that we're all feeling, might be saying things like, I end up feeling a little bit more anxious and I'm having a little bit more trouble sleeping and a little bit more concentrating just because of all the stuff that's going on. I'm wondering if that might be happening with you. So rather than challenging some of the things that you hear or see from kids directly, using statements like this and agreeing and adding rather than disagreeing might make that information a little bit more acceptable or a little bit more hearable to them. The last slide. Back in the day, I was doing outpatient therapy where kids and families would come in to see me an hour a week. And as a part of that job, I would have contact with their teachers and educational assistants at school, some of them at 916. And one of the things that I learned very, very quickly is that for many of the kids that I worked with, you folks had a much higher ability to impact them and to help them than I did, because you were with them 6 hours a week and I was with them 1 hour a week. Right now, we can't be with them 6 hours a week, even though I believe we want to. But I also believe that we can have, and we do have, a profound impact on their lives and an ability to help them do better in their lives and feel better and be more successful and feel less sad and less anxious. Because of the lack of feedback that we get from kids, I worry that oftentimes it doesn't feel like what we do matters. I do want to tell you, I know that what you do does matter and it does help children. Thank you for your attention. I hope this is going as well as it can for you all. And I hope to see you in person soon.